Hey everybody, this is Jason Alba, and man, I can't believe we're coming up to the end of the month. Today is April 28th. It's Tuesday. There are still 3 solid days of free April from Pluralsight. And what we've been doing for this month is going over topics from the courses that I've done on Pluralsight. So these are soft skills and professional development courses. Yesterday, I talked about the pivotal turning point in kind of my Pluralsight career, if you will, where I started out talking about job search and career management type things, informational interviews and personal branding and job search strategies and stuff like that. And then I had this conversation where I thought, okay, I think I'm pretty fulfilled in this area. And I'm going to start creating courses that managers would want their teams to watch, and that's where like the listening course came from, and effective emails, and how to have better phone conversations. Those types of soft skill courses came from. But the first two came out in this transition was leadership getting started, which we talked about yesterday. And then today is Management 101. So if you remember in the backstory that I shared yesterday, I was talking to a salesperson, and he said that people were asking for leadership courses or a course on leadership. And then when I asked what that meant, he said all the answers that he gave me were management. And so I decided that I would make the first course would be on leadership, which would be the topic that he was asking for. But then I would take the actual individual points that people were asking about and make a course on that. And I'll be honest with you, I did not expect this to be a 3.5 hour course. I didn't think anything that I would do would be 3.5 hours. My sweet spot that I've found for my courses are about 1.5 hours. And lately my courses have been 1 hour, which have been really tricky for me to figure out what to say and what to not say. But this is a course where I just really went in and put as much as I could in. So one of the image that has come to mind, and I don't have this up to share, but the image that has come to mind as I thought about this management course is I'm pretty sure I got this in probably my MBA program. So it was in PowerPoint. If you could imagine a series of these really big, what are they called? Anyways, they're kind of triangle things. So you have like the different functions that make up a business. You have HR, finance, marketing, sales. There might be an executive function. And under each of those things, there are duties and responsibilities and outcomes, right? So what is the purpose of HR? What do they do? And then what do they not do that marketing does, right? So what is sales? What's the difference between sales and marketing? So marketing is, one of the functions of marketing is research and to understand market opportunities and stuff like that. Another function of, and actually, let me just make sure. Let me check something real quick. Okay, good. Sorry. I didn't do my audio check because I was just on a call right before this. So another function of marketing is to create marketing assets that the sales team can use, or maybe create scripts for different types of conversations that sales might have, or the onboarding team to do upselling or something like that. So basically what I wanted to do was to break down and, step away from leadership, which was yesterday's course, which has a lot to do with like vision and strategy and big picture and where are we going, and really dig into the teeth of management, where I'm absolutely not saying that a manager can't be visionary, because a manager should be visionary, but an operations manager, as visionary as they are or aren't, their main role is to implement the vision. And part of that is to understand the long-term implications of whatever programs and systems they put in place, and how that will either help or hinder long-term success. But it absolutely has everything to do with today, right? How do I manage today and right now, and what does that mean for my people? And so if we jump over here to the course, let me just make this a little bit bigger. The title is Management 101. And by the way, free April, make sure you click on the button that's buy the free April. This is the one that'll get you where you want, as opposed to the 10-day trial. In this one, you don't have to put a credit card in. If you're watching this after April of 2020, please reach out to me or any other Pluralsight author that you may know and see if we can get you a 30-day pass. All right, so down here on Introduction to Management, we have common management phrases. Now, I think it's absolutely critical if you want to be in management, and not everybody does, and I totally respect that. But if you have any inclination of being in management or just trying to understand why management comes out with stuff, because I've been in meetings or I've gotten emails, company-wide emails, where you hear a communication and you're like, why are they doing this? This doesn't make any sense. And maybe for what you're doing and where you're at, it doesn't make sense. But behind closed doors, in those management and leadership and executive meetings, when they're looking at 20 years down the road and maybe 3x the growth or whatever, certain changes actually do make sense, right? And so one of the things that I wanted to do in this course is bring your vocabulary to a point where you can have these conversations, even if you don't want to be in a management or leadership position or have those responsibilities. Being able to understand and talk the talk is important. Let me just pause here real quick and I'll go on a tangent. I worked for an organization where this became kind of epic in the organization. There was an executive who was on I don't think he was on the board, but he was on the executive committee, and he could not say fiscal year. I'm sure I talk about this in the course. He wouldn't say fiscal year. He didn't understand he understood what a fiscal year was. Okay, so fiscal year, there's two ways of doing this. There's a calendar year. So January 1 is the beginning, December 31 is the end. That's a calendar year. The fiscal year, usually used for like taxes and whatever, closing your books and stuff, you might say that your fiscal year, for example, in the government, I think, if I remember correctly, it starts on October 1 or September 1. It's been a long time since I've been there. I think it's October 1. And so their year ends or begins on October 1, let's say. And so what does that mean, right? So a very interesting thing that means is that, especially with the government, if they have a budget and they've budgeted to buy something and they haven't bought it yet, that very last week or few weeks before the end of the fiscal year, which is not December 31st, is really intense. And they're getting and asking for RFPs and reviewing, and they're making a decision, and they need to write a check, right? I've actually been in that situation where I had university career centers call me up and say, Jason, I have money. I need to spend it. What do you have that I could spend it on? Such a weird way of running an organization. But anyways, so that's the difference between a fiscal year and a calendar year. And it's really important to understand, especially how your customers do it. So if you have government customers or, public sector or whatever, understanding what their year is really important, because that helps you understand what their budget cycle is and when they do their planning, right? As opposed to thinking that, you have this calendar year or quarters or whatever. So anyways, that's the concept between fiscal year and calendar year. And this executive got up and he was doing some presentation in front of all the managers, and he didn't say he didn't say fiscal year. He said physical year. And it was interesting because all these managers are sitting in the audience and we're like, did he just say physical year? Wait, what is a physical? I think he's really trying to say fiscal year. And then the fact that he didn't know the difference between physical and fiscal took him down about 10 notches, right? So we're all looking at him thinking, how is he even in the position that he's in? And he wouldn't change it. And he said it multiple times. And we started losing confidence. And it was like, are you kidding me? So anyways, I really want in this course of 3.5 hours, I want you to understand and start to think about and talk about this language, right? And how we think about management and how we talk about the issues. A lot of this really is, this isn't a vocabulary lesson, but if you were to go through and write down management phrases, you probably pick out a couple pages of stuff. All right, talk about the boss and the customer and defining that, management and or management versus leadership, personal characteristics of a manager, what makes a good manager. And one thing that I want to emphasize here is I'm not talking about personality assessment results, right? I'm talking more about the individual characteristics that you can learn. These are typically things that we might call soft skills. So for example, a really good manager, depending on what their role is, because there's different types of managers, but let's say you're a manager who has P&L responsibility, financial responsibility, and reporting, then you need to be very analytical. You need to increase your ability to understand and analyze the numbers on the P&L, okay? And another characteristic of a great manager might be that you're very persuasive and you get people to follow along with what your program is. And those are two very different characteristics. I think it's important to recognize that, what your characteristics are and maybe even what you want them to be, because it's okay to say, I really excel in these 3 areas. Here are 2 of my weaknesses, but to get to where I want in my career, I need to work on those 2 things. And one of the things that I've loved about talking about soft skills for the last 8 years, has it been? Yeah, 8 years with Pluralsight, is that, some of this stuff, some people come very naturally by being very pleasant or persuasive or analytical or whatever. But a lot of these soft skills you can learn. You can learn them, you can improve them. It's not like you're stuck with those 3 and you'll never have those 2. These are things that you can work towards. And that's a hopeful message for me. It's something that I really appreciate, because I look at certain leaders and managers and I'm like, man, I wish I was as good as they were. Well, the reality is I can learn those skills. And probably if I were to look back 10 or 20 years in their history, they weren't good at those things. But at some point, they figured out that they wanted to work on and improve those. All right, talk specifically about money, talk about project management. Remember, we're talking about hands-on operational managers, not the executive who is pretty detached. In my last organization, the executive was somebody that you might see in the hallway once or every month or 2. Right? But the manager is somebody that you are talking with and maybe in meetings with daily or at least regularly. And you're talking about, hey, here's things going on right now. What do we need to change? What do we need to do? How's this going? Return and report, as opposed to the executive who is really kind of steering this ship, but you're not having those daily conversations with. So does a manager need to know about and understand project management? Absolutely. Okay, communication skills that are helpful for managers, understanding strategy, operations, relationships, human resources, leadership, and then executive conversations and policy. Okay, so that is, let's see. Oh, management skills wrap up. So I did a wrap up before the final wrap up. Then we have the introduction to organizational structures. And so this is really a lot of information that's a primer for understanding the roles and functions of management. All right, the next one, management for new managers. Why management can be lonely? What do you think? Sometimes your goal is to be a manager. You want to be the boss. Like you got a promotion as opposed to a demotion. So you're progressing, right? And then you get there into your office and you're like, I don't have the same friendships that I had, the people that I had lunch with before, and I don't do that anymore because politics are weird, right? You're now talking and thinking about things on a different level. You actually have to lay off 1/3 of your team or the person that you went to lunch with, right? management can be a really tricky place to be. And a lot of people aspire to get there. And then when they get there, they're like, yeah, this isn't what I was thinking at all. So I talk about stuff like that, addressing challenges to your new authority. What if there was a management position opened and you and two of your colleagues, all three of you put in for the position and you got it. And so you have that power and authority in the title, but the other two people lost respect for you, right? Because they were competitors to you. And so that's tricky. Earned respect, right? As opposed to demanding respect because of a title, being liked and being approved of. This thread here so far, I'm basically trying to walk you off a cliff or walk you off the ledge so you can come back and say, okay, things are different now. Things really are different now that I'm in management. Defining expectations and roles, delegating, which is one of the most beautiful concepts around, mastering the meeting, so how to have an effective meeting, using mentors and coaches. And then I talk about ethics and integrity, and I'm a nut for ethics and ethics at the organizational level and integrity at the personal level. And a lot of my earlier courses, I talked a lot about ethics because that's around the time that Enron was imploding, or at least it was still fresh on people's minds. And it just blows my mind that lack of ethics and poor integrity can destroy so many things and so many people. And even if you don't win, even if you miss an opportunity to make $1 million or a gazillion bucks, even if you miss out on things, but you maintain your own personal integrity, you can walk away from your career knowing that you did the right thing. Because I'll tell you what, making a buck, it's fun and it's good, it's important, but it's not as important as maintaining personal integrity. So we talk about that. The last module I talk about people. So managing technical people, which, as you may guess, is a little weird and different than managing non-technical people. Managing sales team, you know, you walk by, let's say you have three meetings. You got a marketing team, you got a sales team meeting, and you have a programmer team meeting. Which of those is going to be the loudest? Well, it might be a toss-up between sales and techies, because techies can get pretty loud. Sales, you're typically going to have music and jumping around and hip hip hooray and lots of excitement and go back to the phones and go get them. And so anyways, there's just different types of people that you're going to manage, and that's okay. Empowering employees, defining and communicating expectations, annual reviews, which effectively, if you're looking for effectiveness, annual reviews is not it. You're looking for things like one-on-ones, and you're looking for things like maybe semi-annual reviews, maybe every 6 months or something like that. Understanding the idea and the purpose of policies and procedures. When you're working at an organization, policies and procedures can seem like a pain, like a massive pain. But when you're in management, policies and procedures, I mean, they're there for a reason, right? How to address people problems, reward systems and incentives, raises and bonuses, the power of precedent, which is a word that I learned, I'd heard it before and I knew what it meant, but I really understood the power of precedent in my very first role when I became an IT manager. And we were coming out with policies and procedures and systems and thinking about growth and thinking about a thing that applied to this one person. And if they were allowed to do something, what does that mean for everybody else, right? Because you will get people in your office who are like, well, they get to do it this way, or they said that way, or, you know, something different than what you're trying to push. And so it's very important to consider precedent as you're developing your own culture and your system. The power of example, managing different, I almost said cultures, which they kind of are different cultures, but different generations, understanding diversity, understanding the value of training, and then taking your vision and mission statements off the shelf and actually applying them and implementing them, and then understanding personality assessments. You can see that some of these other things like personality assessments, Let's see. Well, and stuff from the other modules. Some of these things are covered in depth in other courses on Pluralsight. But like I said, 3.5 hours, and I really give you an overview. I think I mentioned this yesterday, but my inspiration for this, of course, was articles and books and things that resources I could find online. But I really dug into my undergraduate and my MBA program, and I thought, okay, if I wanted a primer on what management is, what would I take from any of those classes or projects or assignments that I had, and how would I wrap that up and put it into a course? Once again, this is a long one, right? So 3.5 hours, that's a lot of stuff. But the goal is to get you to a point in your career where you're comfortable talking about these concepts. And my goal is not that you are like, oh, systems and processes and policies, this is so important, and it's even more important than people or outcome. That's not true. I want to get you to a point where you're critically thinking about systems and policies and processes, and you're able to say, okay, I understand these concepts. How does this work in my organization? How does it work with my team or with my people? You know, if I have a very, very creative group, what kinds of systems and processes? There's some organizations that have gone away. I used to work at the FBI, and we had like this huge binder of SOP, standard operating procedure, and it listed out how to do everything, right? And then you contrast that with some other organizations that, like, I think Google was like, do no evil. Like, do whatever you want, do the right stuff for the right reasons, but don't do any evil. And so they went from, you know, government, huge binder of rules to here are guiding principles, right? And that's what I want you to do. I want you to understand the policies and processes and procedures and systems, but not because I want you to implement them with binders. Maybe all you're doing is you're understanding it, but you're giving your employees more respect. And you're saying, look, we hired you for a reason. We trust you. Here's what our objectives are. And you have very wide boundaries. Like, you can do a lot of stuff, and failure's okay. Like, those are guiding principles. But I want you to understand how to create guiding principles if it's at odds with a policy and procedure thing, right? So that's, like I said yesterday, all of my courses, I want you to debate these. I want you to come in and say, I like this, I don't like that. Or with your team or management, go and say, hey, we talked about, or Jason's course, he talked about these 3 things, and I agree with this one thing, but these other 2 things aren't going to work in our organization. Here's my alternative proposal, right? That's what I want you to do. I don't want you to take everything that I have in my courses and say, let's create and run a company the way Jason would. I want you to take those and have conversations around them and create the best structures and systems for your organization and your objectives. All right, tomorrow we're talking about marketing and selling your own products and services. There's a course called Marketing and Selling Your Own Products and Services. There's also a course called, I think, Writing and Marketing Your Own Book. And I didn't put that on the link, but that should be on the link. I'll put it on the YouTube video. Thursday, we'll talk about understanding your audience, which has actually become a really good and fairly well popular for my courses. It's been well watched. It was a lot of fun to put together. And then the last day on Friday, we talk about customer service for software developers. This is a concept that I love. I'm not talking about how to create a customer service department. I'm talking about how to create a customer service mindset for people who are typically not interfacing with customers, right? So developers are usually not touching or talking to customers for various reasons. But I want developers and people who are removed from the customer to have a customer orientation, right? So anyways, that's it for today. Go get your free April. If you're watching this after April of 2020, reach out to me or any other Pluralsight author, and we'll see if we can get you a 30-day pass on Pluralsight. We'll talk to you soon.